A lot of people either take fish oil, krill oil, algal oil, or just eat fatty fish regularly to get their healthy omega-3 fats. But isn't it a shame to believe that you're consuming enough, yet not be? Not knowing can be almost as disastrous as not doing it at all, because you could go years, decades, believing that you're supplementing your health just to find out that it hasn't been working. So Dr. Rhonda Patrick, with her PhD in biomedical sciences, has some wise words to impart on how to know if you're consuming enough of the health-promoting benefits of omega-3s found in all these oils and some fish. Let's listen in before I add some context to what she's discussing.
I think the best way, to get the EPA and DHA is from eating, a dietary source and measuring what's called the omega-3 index. So the omega-3 index is measuring omega-3 fatty acid levels, the EPA and DHA, and there's other fatty acids as well, but in red blood cell membranes. And it's really important because most of the time when you go and get a omega-3 blood test, the plasma phospholipids are measured, which is better than nothing. But you're really looking more at your dietary intake in the last week or two versus red blood cells, which are 120 days before they turn over. It's a long-term status of your omega-3, kind of like the difference between looking at fasting blood glucose and your HbA1c.
Okay, that short clip alone contains several nuggets of golden information. What she's referring to is, in plain English, measuring the omega-3 fats found embedded in the membrane of your cells versus measuring free omega-3s found in the bloodstream. The important distinction is that omega-3s found in your cell membranes offer a much more exact measurement of your omega-3 fat consumption over time, as well as offers far more exactness on the actual amount integrated into your cells. At the end, she mentions it's similar to measuring fasting blood sugar levels versus measuring the marker HbA1c. It's the same idea, but HbA1c measures the amount of sugar molecules stuck to proteins found inside the red blood cells instead of the omega-3 integrated into the cell membrane. The beauty of these measurements is that red blood cells are formed by your body and then they get disposed of after a certain amount of time in circulation, around 3 to 4 months. So it gives you a 3 to 4 month imprint of your past exposure, as opposed to a snapshot that could be manipulated by simply mass consuming omega-3s the day before a measurement of blood values. So the blood values might rise, and while omega-3 molecules might have some impact in their free form, they provide the greatest benefit when they are integrated into the cell membrane. So the blood values offer an incomplete picture. Anyway, what's the best omega-3 index to shoot for? Typically, people who don't consume much omega-3s end up with an omega-3 index around 4% or less, according to this review. And we can see that evidenced here. Those who do not supplement with omega-3s are mostly in that sub 4% camp. And if a person supplements, they at least get a 2 to 4% index increase in the yellow and the pink there. Typically aiming for at least above 4% is a start, with the aim to reach 8% being ideal. Another consideration is how you achieve around that 8% index, because certain doses of omega-3s have some potential pitfalls. In this scientific review, the researchers point out that doses around 1 gram can meaningfully increase one's omega-3 index, so long as time isn't an object. Lower doses like 1 gram per day take longer to increase one's omega-3 index, yet may avoid some of the negatives of high-dose omega-3 supplementation. On the other hand, high-potency omega-3 consumption, like 4 grams a day, can increase one's omega-3 index far more quickly. But then again, there may be unintended consequences that omega-3s can have on the heart, which I discuss in detail, including vital context, right here.